Mount of Olives, a small hill on the east of Jerusalem. It is the ground zero of some of the most amazing Bible prophecies. It is from this hill that Jesus ascended, and it is again onto this hill that Jesus one day will descend. Mount of Olives, in some Bible translations, it is also referred to as Mount Olivet, is an amazing prophetic geolocation. We find Mount of Olives the first time in the Bible when King David was running away from his rebellious son Absalom. And he ascends up to this mountain when he was crying and pleading with God, praying. Interestingly, King David covered his head and he took his shoes off when he was ascending up to Mount of Olives. Likewise, his company, those who were with him, they also covered their heads and took off their shoes when they were ascending up to Mount of Olives. That is the first time we come across Mount of Olives in the Bible. That is in 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 30. That is a location for King David and his company. It was a location of coming before God and saying, God, we've done wrong, forgive us. Pleading and crying before God for mercy. And then, second mention of Mount of Olives in the Old Testament is an amazing prophecy from Zechariah. That is in Zechariah chapter 14, verse 4. Zechariah talks about the second coming of the Messiah on the Mount of Olives. Zechariah prophesies that the Messiah will come as a king, and as soon as his feet touches on the Mount of Olives, the mount will split into two, and a valley will open in the middle. Now that is the second mention of the Mount of Olives in the Old Testament. But then when we come to the New Testament, suddenly we realize Mount of Olives become a very prominent location, especially in the last 1 week of Jesus' ministry. Now I'm going to show you some of the most amazing prophetic incidences that took place on the Mount of Olives, and how some of those incidences are prophetic actions foreshadowing what will Jesus do on his second coming. This is an amazing study for me. Everything God says and everything God does has a purpose, and there is a pattern behind the words and actions of Jesus Christ. Now let's get into it. You know, Jesus had 3 major visits to the Mount of Olives in his last week on earth before he was crucified. And in fact, Jesus' triumphal entry to Jerusalem started on the Mount of Olives. Now, if you go open in your Bibles, Luke chapter 19, verses 28 down to 38, there is a very good record of this incident there, the triumphal entry. Jesus comes to the Mount of Olives with his disciples and he stops there. And then he sends 2 of his disciples to go and fetch this donkey that nobody rode on which before. And disciples go and go to fetch the donkey. And when the donkey comes, Jesus sat on the donkey, and there Jesus commences. From the Mount of Olives, Jesus commences his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Now, as Jesus enters into Jerusalem, some amazing things happen, and those things are not coincidence. Maybe you read these verses many times and you did not realize, but now I will try to help you to understand the things that happened at that day, at that time, were not ordinary things. They were prophetic actions. They were foreshadows of what is still going to happen. Now, Jesus on the donkey, descending from the Mount of Olives and entering Jerusalem from the eastern gate, entering into Jerusalem from the eastern gate. As Jesus enters, people are celebrating in Jerusalem. They are putting palm branches, and then they are rejoicing. Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai. You see, we read this as Gentiles, and we just look over it and we say, yeah, they just bless Jesus Christ. But they were basically uttering an ancient messianic greeting to welcome the Messiah. So when the disciples, when the Israelites, when the residents of Jerusalem were putting their palm branches and their clothes on the pavement, on the road, so that Jesus can walk with his donkey over and enter into Jerusalem on this triumphal entry, when they were yelling and screaming and saying, Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai, they were actually saying a very specific phrase. Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai is an amazing phrase. It's a messianic greeting to welcome Messiah. Now you find the same messianic greeting also in Psalms 118:26. There also we come across this thing. But later on, God willing, I'm going to make another video specifically focusing on this messianic greeting to welcome Messiah, and I will get deeper details of this. It is another mind-boggling detail. It is too much to cover all of that in one video. But what I just want to highlight here is this phrase, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai. Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai. That is not just a random phrase. That is an ancient messianic phrase to welcome Messiah. When Jews were saying this, they knew what they were doing. They were welcoming the Messiah, the King of Kings, the King of the Jews. They were welcoming him. So this is a significant event, and I'm going to show you later on in the second coming of Jesus Christ, the same scenario will play again. The same Jewish people, not the same individual, but the Jewish people, the Israelites, will say the same thing again when Messiah comes. A little bit later, I'm going to get more into that. Now, so Messiah is entering, triumphal entry into Jerusalem. That started on the Mount of Olives. Messiah's first triumphal entry into Jerusalem commenced on the Mount of Olives. Messiah first comes to the Mount of Olives, and from there he commences his entry, triumphal entry into Jerusalem. That is a prophetic act. Friends, that is a foreshadow of what will Jesus do on his second coming. This is not a coincidence. Jesus' first coming into Jerusalem, first triumphal entry into Jerusalem was from the Mount of Olives. His second triumphal entry into Jerusalem will be likewise from the Mount of Olives, and he will enter into Jerusalem from the eastern gate. And the Jews will yet again scream and shout, Baruch haba b'Shem Adonai. This is a Bible prophecy hidden in the pages of the Bible right in front of our eyes. But if you don't know the background story, you will most likely miss this detail. Now, that is Jesus' first time on the Mount of Olives in his last week on earth before crucifixion. Now I want to take you to his second visit to the Mount of Olives. You know, Jesus' second visit to the Mount of Olives is an amazing time again, because second time when he goes to the Mount of Olives, he walks out of the temple in Jerusalem and heads straight up to the Mount of Olives with the disciples around him. And when they get there, in fact, before they get there, in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus makes this utterance. He utters this prophetic statement. I'm going to zoom into that a little bit with you. Matthew 23, verse 37. Jesus says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her, how often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more until you say, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Here again, Jesus utters this messianic greeting. Jesus says, you shall see me no more until you say, Baruch haba b'Hashem Adonai. Messianic greeting. Jesus is saying, now Jesus has been in Jerusalem. The triumphal entry happened a couple of days earlier. Jesus was in Jerusalem, and then Jesus was in the synagogue. Now he left the synagogue. He is on his way out to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus, his heart bleeds because now the people rejected him. And Jesus says, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how many times I wanted to gather you under my wings, but you did not want. Jesus, at this moment, the destiny of Jerusalem was already determined. Jews already rejected Jesus. The writing was already on the wall. The rest was only execution of the people's decision that they already made in their hearts. Jesus could read their hearts. Jesus saw they rejected him, and Jesus saying, all right, I am leaving the city, and you shall see me no more until you say the messianic greeting and welcome me into your city as your king. Jesus saw. He came once, and although they greeted him at the gates of Jerusalem with the messianic greeting, quickly their hearts turned against him, and Jesus saw they are not embracing him, they are not accepting him. And now Jesus says, okay, Jerusalem, I'm going out and leaving you. Your house is left desolate to you. I'm not going to redeem you now. You did not accept me. Now I'm going out, and you shall see me no more until you greet me and call me in the messianic greeting. And then immediately after this, in Matthew 24, Jesus departs from the temple. As Jesus is departing from the temple, Jesus starts he is departing from the temple through the eastern gate again, towards the east, towards the Mount of Olives, and Jesus is now climbing up the Mount of Olives with his disciples, and he starts telling his disciples this amazing list of prophecies regarding end times, beginning with the destruction of the temple, which Jesus walked out of only a few minutes earlier. Now, you can find the details for this. Go read from Matthew 23, verse 37, all the way down to Matthew 24, and then Mark 13, Luke 21. You will see Jesus goes to the Mount of Olives on his second visit in his last week in Jerusalem with his disciples, and he just gives this amazing list of prophecies regarding end times. That was his second time with his disciples on the Mount of Olives. And then there's going to be yet a third time before he was crucified. Do you know when was that time? Jesus' last time on the Mount of Olives before he was crucified is actually very similar to the time in which King David went up to the Mount of Olives. Remember, King David went up to the Mount of Olives with his company, with his faithful generals and soldiers. When his son Absalom rebelled against him, King David climbs up the Mount of Olives. In 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 30, he's crying, he's in agony, and he's praying to God. Just like that, Jesus, his third visit to the Mount of Olives was on his last night. Right after the Last Supper with his disciples, Jesus climbs up the Mount of Olives with a heavy heart, just like King David, who had a heavy heart to climb up the Mount of Olives. That is the first time we see Mount of Olives in the Bible, actually. And now Jesus, on his third visit up to Mount of Olives, with his disciples around him, with a heavy heart, he knows he's going to be crucified. He knows this is his last moment. He goes and cries before Father God. He says to him, Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me, but not my will, let your will be done. And at that moment, when Jesus is bitterly praying before his Father, his blood drops as a sweat from his head onto the rock. And that is the Garden of Gethsemane is on the Mount of Olives. So if you come across the word of Garden of Gethsemane in your translation, know that it is Mount of Olives. So now Jesus, for the third time with his disciple on the Mount of Olives, you can find this in Matthew chapter 26 and Luke chapter 22. And he cries there before his Father. This is the last prayer. And right towards the end of this prayer, soldiers come to arrest Jesus on the Mount of Olives. They arrest him right on the Mount of Olives and they drag him into the city again through the eastern gate. They beat him, they torture him, and the next day they crucify him. So these are the three very important visits Jesus made to the Mount of Olives on his last 1 week on earth. And interestingly, Jesus' entry into the Mount of Olives, Jesus' triumphal entry into the Mount of Olives Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem began on the Mount of Olives. And Jesus' crucifixion process also began on the Mount of Olives. Jesus was arrested on the Mount of Olives and the next day he was crucified. But then there is yet another visit Jesus makes to Mount of Olives. After he was resurrected, after he appeared to his disciples, he is about to ascend to heavens to his Father, and he has this one last gathering with his disciples, and he takes his disciples again to the Mount of Olives. And at the Mount of Olives, Jesus gives his final speech to his disciples. And after that, he ascends to heavens, to his Father, from the Mount of Olives. This is mind-boggling, friends. This is really exciting. Jesus ascended to heavens from the Mount of Olives. And the angels said to the disciples, "Why are you looking up the sky like that? This Jesus you saw ascending, in the same way he will come back." And yes, it is exactly going to be like that. In the same way, Jesus will come to the Mount of Olives from the clouds. And when his feet touches the Mount of Olives, the mount will split into two, as Zechariah says, and it will open up and there will be a valley in between the two sections of the mount. And from there, Jesus will launch his second triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And for the second time, the Jewish people, the Israelites in Jerusalem, they will cry out, "Baruch haba b'shem Adonai."
Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Baruch